the guys and the gals that, back in the day, right? We were scared they were going to pull our pass if we were going too fast. But, they're much more than that, right? Ski Patrol is there for you if you need directions to the bathroom or directions to a really great line, or if you need a Band-Aid, or if you need a ride in a toboggan.
Welcome to the storm.
I'm your host, Stuart Winchester. Ski Patrol is making news this year, and we cannot do what we love to do without them. So, let's throw a spotlight on the Red Jacket crew today. First, thank you so much for being here. The Storm is your source for independent ski journalism, covering the lift-served ski areas that define our collective winter. Everyone else is searching for skiing soul. I am trying to find its brains. And as many of you know, the podcast is just a small part of the Storm Skiing newsletter. My mission is to deliver the best ski newsletter in the world. And you can check that out and subscribe at stormskiing.com. There's a free version, and if you like it, you can support my mission of independent ski journalism by upgrading to the paid tier, which will give you access to 100% of the Storm's content. You can also follow the Storm on X, Instagram, or YouTube, where you can now watch the Storm at Storm Ski Journal. And don't forget about the Storm Store, where you can rep the brand by picking up a hat, hoodie, t-shirt, sticker, and more at stormskiing.myshopify.com. You know who else supports the Storm's mission of independent ski journalism? My friends at Aspenwear. Can you imagine a future where 99% of your mountain products are booked online? Well, Aspenwear can help you do that. Aspenwear is the leading e-commerce solution purpose-built for the ski industry. They created customized e-commerce platforms that ensure resort guests spend more time doing what they love and less time standing in line. Utilizing the team's extensive industry experience, Aspenwear strives to make the resort booking process seamless with a mobile-friendly, simplified sales process that anticipates the needs of customers at every part of their journey. Based in Denver, Colorado, Aspenwear stands apart as an innovator. They understand the value that software and technology bring to a mountain resort, and they strive to create solutions so good they seem invisible. Visit aspenwear.com to learn more. All right, time for episode 212 of the Storm Skiing Podcast. Stephanie Cox, CEO of National Ski Patrol. My guest today has been CEO of National Ski Patrol since 2022. The organization, which was founded in 1938, is made up of more than 30,000 members at 650 winter and summer resorts, Nordic ski areas, state parks, backcountry ski areas, and search and rescue organizations across the United States, as well as affiliated organizations in Canada, Europe, and Asia. Prior to taking the top leadership role at National Ski Patrol, she was executive director of World Child Cancer USA, a global health organization that supports children with cancer and their families. She also held leadership roles at solar lighting startup Nocero International, IDE, or IDE, not sure how to say that, an international organization that powers entrepreneurs to end poverty, and The Level Market, a business-to-business global marketplace for aid supplies. Stephanie Cox is my guest. Stephanie, welcome to the Storm. We just wrapped an incredible ski season across North America, and National Ski Patrol was a foundational part of that experience for tens of millions of skiers. I am so fired up to learn more about these folks who make our ski areas go. How you doing today, Stephanie?
Hi, Stuart. I'm great. And like you said, just feeling really, really happy that we wrapped up such a successful ski year. And I'm just really pleased to be here. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely, my pleasure. So the National Skiers Association reported the second best year ever for skier visit numbers. And chatting before we started talking here on the recording, you are in the epicenter of it all. Colorado, it typically accounts for 1 in 4 ski area visits in America. So you're right there in the heart of it all. You've said in the past on other channels that you like to get out and see ski patrols and visit different areas. So what was your 2024 to 25 winter like? What did your travel schedule look like? Where did you hit and what did you learn?
Oh my goodness. Okay. That's a big question. But yeah, so it's really important for me. Like you said at the beginning, we have over 30,000 members. We have 650 patrols, right? So it's really important for me to get out, to hear what our membership needs, to watch what's happening, to visit the ski areas and the ski area management so that we can serve their needs better. Yeah, I have had quite a travel schedule. Tried to slow it down, but then stuff always comes up, right? Opportunities to speak and to meet people. In fact, I'm going, oh gosh, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday to the Intermountain Ski Areas Association meeting and talking to the ski areas in our Intermountain area. This year I was really pleased to be able to meet with a bunch of patrols out in our Central Division. Very important area for us. Our second largest division for National Ski Patrol is that central part of the United States. And then also, I like to go see some of the smaller ski areas. So I also went down to Angel Fire. As you know, live in Colorado, so it's super easy for me to go up and visit a lot of our ski area partners up at Summit County. So spent a lot of time at Loveland and Eldora and Breckenridge and Copper. I can't have a favorite. I don't have a favorite. Even visited Taos this spring. Was feeling for our New Mexico ski area partners. They had a low snow year, unfortunately. But the good news is that the central, the eastern, and the southern parts of the United States had a really good ski area snow year, which was great. They recovered from a not so great one the previous year, so they're doing pretty good there. But yeah, I do tend to spend some time on the road, and also I have a great team, and we have great leadership in our membership ranks, and they keep me informed. Also, we have an interesting organization where we are very devolved, right? We have a division and regional and section and patrol level structure, kind of like the military.
Okay.
And we have leadership at all those levels, which is great. So I tend to stay in close touch with those leaders to keep the ears to the ground.
So you're based in Colorado now. Curious for context before I ask you some follow-up questions on some of those regions and what you may have learned there. Where did you grow up? Did you grow up in Colorado? Did you grow up skiing somewhere?
Yeah. So I've been in Colorado now about 26 years.
Mhm.
My daughter was also born here. But I actually grew up back east,
Mhm.
like you, but in Virginia.
Okay.
So I grew up in Charlottesville, Virginia. I learned to ski at a smallish resort, Wintergreen
Mhm.
Resort.
Yeah.
And for the most part, it was really during middle school and then into the high school years. I was skiing at Wintergreen, and that was the time where, my parents didn't even ski, but they really wanted their daughters. I have two sisters. They really wanted us to like enjoy the outdoors. And so they had us in everything, right? From Girl Scouts to skiing to all of it. And they would just drive us up on the weekend to Wintergreen, put us in our jeans and our boots, sweatshirts, no helmets at the time, and off we go. We never had lessons, but we followed others to learn how to ski. We would watch ski patrollers from the lift, and that's how I actually learned how to ski. And it instilled in me this love for the outdoors, and particularly the love for skiing and how that feels, that freedom, right? This is why we all do it. It's just that sense of connection to nature and that freedom. And I have to be honest, like that adrenaline, right? So going down Eagle Swoop at Wintergreen Resort, I still remember it very, very fondly. It was also my first encounter with ski patrol. And as a teenager, you don't really want to encounter ski patrol. So, at the time, I just remember they were the cool, men and women in those big red jackets, but they were to be avoided. They were always to be avoided. Yeah. Um, and today, right, we revere them now.
Hmm. I'm curious, Stephanie, because I've thought about this a lot. When I started skiing, I was a teenager and it was in the Midwest. And I almost regarded patrol as police on skis. And it seemed like like kind of an oppositional relationship. And they're always stomping down my jumps and getting after us for skiing too fast or whatever. The dynamic seems different now. Maybe that's because I'm a 40-something father of two and I just conduct myself differently. Or maybe there's been a philosophical change in the way the patrol interacts with the skiing public. As with many things, I can't figure out if I've changed or it's changed as the world and the culture change. Do you have any thoughts on that?
You know, it's a good observation, and I think it's a little bit of both, right? But to be honest, we've worked really hard, at least at National Ski Patrol, to instill that sort of guest services mindset with ski patrollers. So they're not just the guys and the gals that, back in the day, right? We were scared they were going to pull our pass if we were going too fast, which, they should if you're straight lining down a mountain. That's a no-no. That's dangerous. Don't do it. But they're much more than that, right? They have the Band-Aids. They're there for a comforting word to a mother if the child had an accident, right? We try to instill that it's really about the guest experience. And we're there in case something happens, but we're very visible, right, to the guest. And we want the guest to have a fantastic experience. We don't want them to be afraid of ski patrol. We want them actually to engage with ski patrol, right? To feel like ski patrol is approachable. Ski patrol is there for you if you need directions to the bathroom or directions to a really great line, or if you need a Band-Aid or if you need a ride in a toboggan, right? And so I do think that it has changed. And again, they're just not the folks that at the end of the day take off the red jackets and go home. They're always first responders too. So I think that's changed too, where when they leave the mountain, they're going to be the first people to respond if there's a car accident on the way home. They're going to be the people to respond if you go to your local grocery store and Nana falls down and has a heart attack. So they're there for the community, right? They're there because they care about people.
Mhm.
And so when you care about people, you want to be more approachable, right? So you're not the traffic cops. You're really there to keep people safe, and that's our mission.
Yeah, it's there's so much there, Stephanie. And as I mentioned when we were chatting before the conversation started, I visited about 60 ski areas this winter, and that's my average. I've been to several hundred. And so my observations are based on a very broad sample set, although minimal at each place in general. And one thing I've been very impressed by as I've traveled across the country is the consistency with which ski patrol operates to a certain standard. And I'll give you an example. So I go to a lot of high-end resorts and I go to a lot of backcountry, backwoods resorts. So 3 years ago, and my listeners have heard this story a million times, so they can fast forward through this, but I was at Black Mountain of Maine. I don't know if you've been there, but it's a little bump, kind of back of the woods. It's down the road from Sunday River, which is this mega resort in Maine. And I was there on a Friday, wasn't that busy, and was having a great time. Broke my leg, tib fib, total spiral fracture, worst moment of my life. And I'm just sitting there on the hill in agony, not knowing what happened. I cannot overstate enough how professional, compassionate, capable these patrollers were. They showed up, they got me out of the sled, which was not easy because I was screaming because of the pain of moving. They skated me down. By the time I got down, there was an ambulance waiting with a fentanyl drip. And other than my, 10 minutes or so of agony on the slopes, the rest of the process went pretty well. I mean, I did a full recovery. I've skied over 150 days since then. It was great. If you would have asked me before that, if I would have expected that sort of treatment at Black Mountain of Maine, no disrespect to Black Mountain of Maine, but it's not a major ski area. Lift tickets are cheap. It's kind of hard to get to. Most people have never heard of it. It's fun. I like it. But talk about how the National Ski Patrol works across this gigantic network to make sure that anyone who's wearing that uniform is able to apply that standard of care. So if you break your leg, it doesn't matter if you're at Black Mountain of Maine or Beaver Creek, you can still expect to get out of there, be in an ambulance, and be in the right place to get the care at the same time. I know that's a long question, but I wanted to give that context to really give the listeners appreciate that I appreciate what it's like to go down in your worst moment at a small place.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm sorry you had that experience, but I'm really glad Ski Patrol was there for you. And I always tell this to be like, they always show up. Like no matter where you are, it's like as soon as something happens, they're there and they have the sixth sense. Of course, they have the radios and everything, but it's like amazing how they just are there in your greatest time of need. And like you said, how the delivery of care is so consistent. And that's really what we pride ourselves on. You know, we have the big job of making sure that ski patrollers are credentialed, right, through our education, training, and courses, but that training is highly consistent and routine, and that all the patrollers not only go through 120 hours of training when they first become patrollers, but that every single year they must refresh on that training, right? And the consistency comes from, yes, our standard of care and our education courses, but also through the structure of Ski Patrol, right? So, you know, like you said, with 32,000 members, to be honest, 650 patrols, because sometimes we have two patrols in one area, or like you said, backcountry ski areas, right? Or just patrols on Forest Service land, that whatever happens, that you can expect the same response, right? And so we depend largely on our organizational structure to make sure that training is delivered at the division and region and patrol level with the utmost consistency. And so we actually have like instructor, let's say, redundancy, right? So we have instructors, instructor trainers, and instructors of record, right? So we have a lot of care that goes into even instructing those core courses to our membership. And that for us should give the ski areas and the general public just peace of mind. That's really what we want. I think of ourselves as sort of the Intel inside, right? So you get that Intel, you get that processor. It's the same in every computer, right? You got to run the same. It's inside. It's not the flashy outside. It's not something that the public sees, all this training, all of this knowledge, all of this studying, but you know that it's there and it's there consistently.
You know, respecting that consistency, I would have to imagine that patrol is also something that's always evolving. And that sort of goes back to what we were talking about earlier as, you know, police versus partners. And as you getting back to you traveling around, as you travel around, how much do you look for the outliers, the ones who, yeah, they're doing all the protocols right, but they came up with something cool and something that maybe no one else thought of, and it's working really well, and maybe this is something we should be doing anywhere. Is that something that has been part of your observation, you're traveling around? And if so, can you give us some examples?
Yeah, so I'll say a couple of things. You know, we have such a large organization, but we also have a lot of committees, right? And make no mistake, this organization is by and large run by volunteers. And we have volunteer committees that run our education programs, that run our outdoor emergency care program, our refreshers, our avalanche program, our toboggan, our mountain programs. Like, our volunteers are at the heart of this organization. And those committees are really the ones responsible for identifying, let's say, a new trend or identifying a new best practice, let's say, on our medical committee, that then they want to adopt or adapt and roll it into our core training program, which is outdoor emergency care. Now, they're the ones who identify it. They bring it to the committee discusses it. It could take, a lot of committee time to actually make that a change into our core program, but because it has to be vetted, right? It has to be so vetted to make sure that that is really something that we want to adapt. Now, I will say, when I do travel, I look for, because I'm an entrepreneur at heart, I look for innovation, right? I look for, I'm not a medical professional, so I don't look for all the new medical, let's say, technology or techniques, but I definitely look for the innovation that's happening at the patrol level. And so, as an example, at the patrol level, a lot of patrols have been picking up and creating programs for patroller wellness. And we saw so much innovation at the patrol level and care and concern for the patrollers, right? Stress awareness and stress response, that innovation went to our medical committee. The committee formed a task force, and that task force created a whole patroller wellness program, right? So it started at the patrol level. It was identified as, hey, wait, a bunch of patrols are doing something. Let's consolidate this. Let's make this something. Let's make it a job of a task force. And now this is a whole patroller wellness program. Some of the innovation that I've seen at the patrol level includes things like using dogs, particularly back east in the Midwest, as therapy dogs. Right? So we all know about the Avy dogs. We love our Avy dogs. They have a job to do, and that's a super important job, especially west of the Mississippi. But in the Central Division and the Eastern Division, we have patrollers who started getting their dogs trained as therapy dogs and taking them to work on the ski hill and using those dogs to calm patients or to calm parents. And those dogs would go into, let's say, the aid room, and while the child is crying because they broke an ankle, the dog is right there by the child's side, calming that child down so that the patroller can actually talk to the parents and have that conversation, right? And we just did a great article about this in our last Ski Patrol magazine. So yeah, we're always on the lookout for innovation, and this innovation a lot of time percolates and comes up at the patrol level. And that's why it's so important to pay attention and be in tune to what our members are doing at that level.
Outdoor Brands, let me ask you a question. Does your marketing need a fresh perspective from industry experts? Do you need better storytelling? Do you need rebranding or advertising? If you do, and you probably do, then I would like to introduce you to my friends at Bonfire Collective, a fractional marketing team that collaborates with ski areas and outdoor brands. So what exactly does that mean to be a, quote, fractional marketing team that collaborates with ski areas and outdoor brands? Well, what that means is that Bonfire can help you rethink your approach in ways that can turbocharge your business. Bonfire Collective, for example, took on the marketing at one New Hampshire ski area and doubled revenue in just 3 years. And when the Storm was ready to invest in our first ever digital marketing campaign last year, we worked with Bonfire to make it happen. I could not be happier with the results, and I think you will love working with them too. No, I know you will love working with them too. To get started, you will want to talk to Eric over at Bonfire Collective. Eric was a co-founder of Bluebird Backcountry Colorado, as you've seen on this podcast, and he knows the ski business. Visit bonfirecollective.com, or I'll be happy to make that connection for you. All right, back to Stephanie. Now, those are some really interesting initiatives, Stephanie, and that leads me to admit that I don't understand a lot about how Ski Patrol works. I know it's everywhere at every ski area that I go to, but I am never really sure why, and what I mean by that is, do they have to have it? Is it an insurance requirement? Is this just a custom? And I'm curious some of these things you're describing, like the mental health programs, may get expensive. And I'm wondering, to what extent do you work with these ski areas, or do you just work with patrollers and then they are your ambassadors to the ski areas to work it out themselves? So can you help us understand what National Ski Patrol's relationship is to the ski areas of North America, why you're everywhere, and how and whether you work with them on all these different things we've been talking about that Ski Patrol does?
Yeah. So sort of a three-part question. Let me see if I can unpack that. So let me take you back a little bit to the history, right? So National Ski Patrol was formed in 1938 by Charles Minute Dole, or Minnie Dole, as he's regarded, for the very purpose to keep people safe in the ski area that didn't then, at that time of the ski industry, have any patrollers. And he had a friend who actually died in a ski accident. And a lot of these ski areas were created in very remote areas, right? So there was no ambulance service at the time, right? You can't just pick up the phone and dial 911 and an ambulance is there. And that's the situation for a lot of these ski areas. And so his idea was, we need to form a patrol that keeps guests safe, but also is able to respond to traumatic incidences, and especially to transport people in these high alpine environments down to safety. So since that time, a lot has evolved in the ski area. But at that point, we were very much the service providers, as we are today, to the ski areas where it didn't exist. And now, right, the ski areas couldn't operate without National Ski Patrol. You couldn't get insurance coverage, right, at a ski area if you didn't have patrol. We are the heart and the reason for a ski area to operate, because not only do we try to keep people safe at the front end, right, by educating people and marking dangerous territory and making sure people know the code to stay safe, but also to respond in case there are incidences, and in particular, right, to get them quickly off the mountain and down to safety. So we are partners with the ski areas, and Ski Patrol are service providers to the ski areas. And so when a patrol is formed, it is formed as a service to the ski area, but trained by Ski Patrol. When those patrols are operating on the ski area during the day, right, and they're marking territory, or they're, doing whatever they need to do, they're acting as agents of the ski areas, right? Not as National Ski Patrol. So this means that the partnership is incredibly important, right? Because without the ski areas, Ski Patrol wouldn't exist, right? And ski areas wouldn't exist if Ski Patrol didn't exist. And so it's very nice symbiotic relationship that we have. So our patrols are always in touch with the management at the ski areas, what they need. And I also do a lot of conversations with the ski area management, and so do our division directors. And so we are definitely partners in this entire industry together.
What sorts of things do you talk to the ski areas about?
Gosh, you name it, right? So one really great example is something called outdoor risk management. We call it ORM for short. It's really the front end stuff that ski areas need to, let's say, open a resort, right? Make sure that it's operating during the day, to mark man-made obstacles, right, with padding or whatever that is. And we constantly talk to the ski areas about, well, what do you need in terms of outdoor risk management? Well, those conversations evolved so well that we created a course specifically for patrollers called Outdoor Risk Management. And it's a pure online course that gives every patroller the basics, let's just say the ORM 101, of what it means to run a ski area effectively and safely. And so we created this whole online course just last year, jointly with the ski areas, and it's been a huge success. And so that to me is something that means that NSP has been responsive to the ski areas, and we've delivered what they needed, and now our patrols have put it into practice.
Curious about how that all works financially, because I realize you have a volunteer component and then you have a paid component. Does the ski areas help support National Ski Patrol at all, or does your money come from membership dues from Ski Patrol members? What kind of insight can you give us there?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of both, right?
Mhm.
So in 1980, we were given a federal charter, and that
Mhm.
federal charter, and it's only given to like a handful or two of organizations. So the other organizations would be like Boy Scouts, American Red Cross, and National Ski Patrol. And we were given that charter because Congress thought that what we were doing was so important. It was a public good, right? And that we were to be run by volunteer ski patrols. And so all of our volunteer patrollers pay membership dues. They even pay for their outdoor emergency care course. And that can be about, $150. They also sometimes buy their uniforms, sometimes they buy their medical supplies, and they do it because they volunteer to do it because they see it as a public good and it's their personal passion. Now, a lot of our volunteer patrollers, all of them, right, have other jobs, other professions. Most of them are doctors, nurses, lawyers, engineers, architects, you name it. They pick up patrolling because it's their way to give back to the community, right? And honestly, we are all lifelong learners. And so we've got 33,000, what did I say, type A patrollers because, everyone wants to learn more and more and more and more. So we keep creating more courses. Now, on the other side of things, we also have what we call our professional division or our paid patrollers. And those are the ones that you probably see sometimes during the week when you come out west, right? And you're skiing during the week, let's say at Copper Mountain. Now, those patrollers are hired by the ski area and they're paid by the ski area. So we have nothing to do with that employer-employer relationship. We certainly are there to train them up. So the ski areas then pay for them to be members of NSP. So they're writing a check, we invoice them, and they're writing a check and they're paying for that training and for them to be members. So that's how that works.
And is every ski patrol that we see on an American ski area part of National Ski Patrol, those patrollers, or are there exceptions that have carved out and done their own thing?
Yeah, there's some exceptions. I mean, one of my big goals for the organization is to make sure that all patrols fall under the NSP shield, really. And for the reasons that you stated earlier, right, about consistency of training, quality of training, all of that, I think it would behoove every patrol to be a member of NSP to get all access to all the education that we provide. But no, there's definitely patrols that are outside of NSP that aren't members, but we're actively talking to them to get them to come back. And I will say it's not very many, right? It's probably 1 or 2 dozen, but they're very important to us. And I still consider them part of our community, whether or not they choose to be members of National Ski Patrol. Look, so the general public doesn't know the difference, right? And that's how it should be. General public just needs to know that if they see a white cross, they're in good hands. And it doesn't matter, who they're members of or if they're paid or if they're volunteer, they just need to know that white cross keeps them safe.
What are some of the resorts that are not part of National Ski Patrol or resort patrols?
So there's just a handful of them, but I would say, there's we love Big Sky and Taos, right? And so some of them, they do their own education, their own training. They may just hire EMTs, right? And they have EMTs working, and that is great. And that's fine. We happen to think that our outdoor emergency care standard is the gold standard, right? It was developed specifically by Minnie Dole for the ski areas, right? For the ski industry. It was fit for purpose. And so that's why we think that is the gold standard. We keep it fit for purpose. We keep it extremely focused on the ski industry and the bike industry, I want to say. But so for some of these other ski areas that aren't members of NSP, we welcome them back anytime, or we welcome them to NSP. And we just made it easier. So if it's a patrol, let's just say, that has all EMT or EMS personnel, we made it easier for them to be members by bridging over, right? Doing a quick sort of checklist type of test to become OEC certified.
Those are two big patrols you mentioned, and they control big, rowdy mountains. So I have to imagine this relationship would work the other way, that the folks at Taos and Big Sky, both of which I've skied at quite a bit, could bring a lot of knowledge from managing these very complicated mountains into your system. Is that part of your pitch as well, and saying, look, you're experts on AVI control, especially Taos. I mean, that place is crazy. And Big Sky is just monstrous, and with Lone Peak and all the things they have to deal with. Do you talk to them that way? Like, hey, we really respect what you're doing, and you could bring a lot to your colleagues at other mountains.
100%, right? We're better the more knowledge we all have, right? So it's not a one-way street. It's both ways. So the more patrol level or ski area level members that we have, the more knowledge that we glean and the better programs that we can create. So that's why I really think that it will lift all ships to have everybody under the NSP shield, because we will have that knowledge to share both ways.
So I want to dig into this volunteer versus paid ratio a little bit, because maybe I don't follow a lot of industries, but just being in America, being an American, I'm used to thinking of labor as paid, right? So I was surprised to see the ratio of volunteers. And I know there's all kinds of benevolent reasons that folks do this, but I want to dig in a little bit more here. So the fact sheet says that your fact sheet says 62% of your members are volunteer, 38% are paid professionals. That doesn't mean that 62% of ski patrol work is done by volunteers, because maybe they're working 1 3-hour shift a week and a full-timer is working, 5 10-hour shifts. But can you dig in a little bit more and help us understand what that means as far as the ratio of folks who are actually making a living as a ski patroller, and how many of the ski patrollers we encounter are, this is their profession, they're fully trained on all these things, and the others are yes, they're also fully trained, but they're there to help, and it's not necessarily what they're making their living on.
So I'm going to ask you to say more about that question, because I think, for the general public, let me just say, they're not going to know the difference between a volunteer or a paid patroller. And that's the most important thing, right? Most of the paid patrollers, right, are west of the Mississippi. And that's because the mountains are bigger, more dangerous, and open year round practically, right? We do have a lot of paid patrollers actually in our southern division, but for the most part, they're out here out west for those reasons, right? And so the ski areas themselves, they decide what the ratio is for them. A great example is, let's just take Loveland or Winter Park. They have, 180, 200 patrollers, right? And they have a great mix of those that are paid that work usually during the week. 5 days a week or 6 days a week sometimes, and then the volunteers, right, who will come in on the weekends and work on the weekends, and they train together, right? And so the general public wouldn't know the difference. They don't know who did the lift evac at Winter Park this past year, right? Was it paid or volunteer? Nobody knows, because nobody cares, right? It's up to the ski area to say, hey, look, we have to have our core, right, core hours covered by a certain group, and then we need to supplement, right, with the volunteers. And that's how that gets figured. We don't figure in that ratio.
So it sounds as though, and I don't want to speak for you, but I'll give you a chance to react to this, that the National Ski Patrol doesn't have a position on the correct ratio of volunteer to paid. That is something that you entrust the ski areas with, and you provide the standard of training to whomever they decide will be a patroller. Is that fair?
100%. You nailed it.
Okay. So, what I wonder about from the outside is is the ski industry cutting corners ever? Doesn't sound like you think that's the case, that there are a lot of people who are motivated for benevolent reasons to do this. So when folks hear volunteer versus paid, this is the result of a long-running relationship between the ski areas and the National Ski Patrol that has aligned on a system that works with voluntary volunteers without any sort of exploitation or ski area corner bending going on.
Absolutely not. I can tell you that they are more than covered for what they need. And we have dedicated, passionate volunteers who, look, the average volunteer spends 50 years, no kidding, 50 years in National Ski Patrol. That's how dedicated and passionate they are, because their patrol turns into family. And as I said, they're also lifelong learners. And so the knowledge and expertise that they bring over the span of that 50 years is incredible, right? And it is a huge benefit to whether or not you're in a paid patrol or a volunteer patrol. So, all of our educational content is developed by volunteers. Those volunteers who have spent 50 years in the ski areas, no matter if it's, on the East Coast or the West Coast, right? Developing this education and this content, and that's invaluable. So the ski areas are more than covered with this beautiful mix, right, of paid patrollers and volunteer patrollers.
So if you look at it's actually funny because the volunteer patrollers in general are volunteers because they have another line of work. Many of them are doctors, for example, and obviously very well compensated. The patrollers themselves, they're doing seasonal work. They are often compensated at, we'll call them middle class wages, but they're living in mountain towns, which, as we all know, particularly in the West, are getting harder and harder for the middle class to afford. Are you at all concerned with, as the National Ski Patrol, affordability issues in mountain towns, and in any way advocating for better compensation for professional patrollers?
We try to stay in our lane, right? National Ski Patrol is an education and credentialing organization. We do not get involved in benefits, pay, employer-employer relationships. We wish them all the best. We want them to work all their issues out, whatever those are. And we will be here as a constant for the ski areas to train and to educate any patroller that they need us to train and educate.
So I'd imagine that extends to the unionization efforts we've seen across the United States. 14 big mountain patrols, all in the West now unionized. Sunday River, I believe, is either trying to or has moved in that direction. Aspen's Four Mountains have their own patrol union. Does the National Ski Patrol have any stance on unions, any official position?
We don't take a position because, again, the industry is always changing and evolving. And we have to stay constant and true to our own mission. And we have to adapt to a changing industry. Like, that's why I'm here, right? Is to create programs and innovation to adapt to changing industry. And yeah, we're always looking at what's happening within the industry, and how we can change our education and training programs or make those adapt to the industry. But, we don't get involved in any unionization efforts or employer-employee issues.
So let's get into what you want this to evolve into. And I want to go back to do that. So we got your ski story. You started at Wintergreen, great little resort run by Pacific Group Resorts, and they run a bunch of ski areas. And they are famous for having a ski season with 0 inches of snow in 2021 to 22 or 22 to 23, where they were able to nonetheless open the entire 1,000 vertical foot of that very popular mountain. And so we know you started there, but then we sort of fast forwarded. So give us a little in between, Stephanie, of your ski life and some of these other entrepreneurship things, as you described them, that you did, and how that ultimately interested you in the National Ski Patrol and what this organization stands for and is doing?
Well, ever since that experience at Wintergreen, I just became a lifelong passionate skier.
Mm-hmm.
And went off on a really, as you know, interesting career journey since that time in high school skiing at Wintergreen. My career has been really interesting. I've worked overseas. I've worked in large international aid organizations. I've started my own company, ran my own company. I ran startups. But the theme in all of that was always about keeping people safe and caring for people in communities. And so this isn't about me. This is about National Ski Patrol and the mission of keeping people safe. And it's just, to me, seems like it was a natural progression in my career trajectory to end up here to apply all that experience, right? This is I think the 5th board that I've been on or worked on. Like we talked about, sort of, I love entrepreneurship. I love innovation and new ideas. And I think to modernize and take an organization into the next decade, right? That's a useful mindset to have. I think working with large international humanitarian organizations is very similar to working with a large international organization like Ski Patrol. So I think it was actually a really beautiful natural evolution. And people say, well, are you a patroller? And I'm like, I am not a patroller, although I was mentored by a patroller in my family. So my brother-in-law was a patroller for 28 years at Aspen Highlands. Very difficult mountain, as you know, right? We even had a patrol dog in our family, River, who was with us, or still with us actually, for 12 years. And River retired, and so did my brother-in-law, Aaron. But I was mentored by him, and I was adopted by that Aspen Highlands patrol community while living in Colorado. So I had a big taste of what it meant to patrol already. I'm also a very passionate mountain biker. And so, we do have National Bike Patrol. I was a bike coach. And I got to tell you, when I'm out there mountain biking or downhill mountain biking, I am super grateful that there are patrollers on their bikes out there now, and trained up in outdoor emergency care. So yeah, I just think that this adventurous life that I've had landing at Ski Patrol was pretty natural, and being able to apply what I've learned earlier in my career to working with my incredible board, to working with the team, to designing what it might look like to be National Ski Patrol in the next 5 to 10 years. So that's all really exciting to me, and that's the opportunity that I see here.
Yeah, let's talk about that evolution, Stephanie, because we're obviously living in a very rapidly changing world, and we've seen an acceleration, and particularly since COVID, of a modernization of skiing. And this has happened in a lot of different ways. I mean, obviously, the gear is a lot better, and that's been happening for a while, but things like cashless resorts, Vail going to an Epic Pass that's stored on your phone, being able to buy everything online in advance, and ski areas finally meeting consumers where they are. Digital trail maps. I know the Slopes app I have, you can call Ski Patrol with one click from that. So I'm wondering what your vision is for the future of patrol. I've seen, for example, some patrols that are deploying drones on particularly big mountains, like say Vail Mountain, when they get a call in the back bowls of someone's down. Well, the back bowls are freaking bigger than most ski areas themselves. So it can really help them pinpoint and help folks find them. So that's just one example, and I have no idea if that's something you're thinking about, but what does it mean to you to modernize Ski Patrol, and what are the initiatives you're pushing right now to help make that happen?
I love this question, because I'm always excited to talk about some of the initiatives that we've started and that we're testing. But first and foremost, my most important thing is to know my audience, right? To know my membership. And so we just got back our survey, and our membership is largely over the age of 50, right? So more than 50% of our membership is over the age of 50. And that is deep institutional knowledge, right? That is professionalism. That is wisdom that we very much value. And also those folks that have been doing this for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, right? So they greatly inform our legacy and also, I would say, our transition a little bit, right? And so when I look at sort of the idea of modernizing Ski Patrol and our offerings and what we do, I acknowledge the deep wisdom and the legacy, and also acknowledge that we have to recruit and inspire a whole new generation, right? That learns differently, right? That welcomes innovation and technology. And so we look at how to modernize even the way we deliver our education programs, right? On the phone, right? So it's no longer this 400, 200-page book, right? That they literally want to learn and scroll and have interaction and videos. And so we're actually doing all of that, right? But I have to remember that I have to keep educating our majority of our population and inspiring and educating the new generation that's coming up, right? I love the idea of the drones. I love the innovation in the medical field, the mechanical chest compressions, like game changer, right? Some of those machines, our patrols are already adapting and using a lot of this technology. For me, it really looks like, what is NSP going to look like for, we're 85 years old. I say we're 85 years young because I think we got another 85 years ahead of us, right? And so what is that going to look like, right? That's going to be opening up our membership. So historically, and sort of inside baseball here, our membership has been only those members who take outdoor emergency care, right? So we were really the national OEC patrol. But now we've initiated a pilot program where you can be an EMT and come be a member, right, of NSP on your patrol, not just on your own, right? And we've expanded our membership criteria and offerings, which is great. So to me, that's also a modernization of our membership, right? We just launched an ambassador athlete program. And that ambassador athlete program is to really inspire the younger generation with the athleticism. Like, it's hard to be a patroller. Like, it is grueling. It is physical work. It is a lot of mental work. And it requires athleticism. And so we decided, let's create a program where we take some of the best of our younger patrollers, and we've got some folks in there, of a certain age, that can go out and be our ambassadors. And they're skiing and competing and mountain biking and skiing events all over the country. And so we have a new, let's just say a new reintroduction of what it means to be a ski patroller, right? You're athletic, you're charging on the mountain, you're skiing, you're biking, you're doing big mountain competitions, and you're studying hard and you're taking all your tests and your courses. And so we just introduced that last year. We're happy to say that we have 6 athletes that we're sponsoring, male, female, mountain bike, skiing, and we're just really excited to get that going again this upcoming season. So we just partnered with an organization called CAPC, and basically that organization is giving our patrollers credit for all the work that they do, all the courses that they take, which is wonderful. So those are continuing education credits. So we are starting to now, after, for me, 24 months of listening, starting to put together some new initiatives and programs to start to test, to start to roll out, keep our ear to the ground, see how things are going, see if it's sticking, if it's not sticking. A lot of new partnerships we're doing, which is great. Institutional partnerships. We've partnered with Mammut, which was just huge for us. Wonderful new corporate partner. So my vision of NSP and in the next 5-10 years is a thriving, modern, leaner, right, responsive organization that's bringing in a whole new crew of younger ski patrollers.
So to wrap all the things together, technology and partnerships, one of your recent partners is Snow Angels, and I've had Chauncey and Kelly Johnson on the podcast. It was very moving, and the outpouring I got after that of people who said it resonated with them was huge. One complaint I see a lot from skiers is hit and runs and skiers not stopping. We have technology now. I live in New York City. There's a camera on every corner. So if you hit someone with a car, you're going to get caught. Is there an opportunity to build out ski infrastructure to have better surveillance? And one ski area, Wachusett, Massachusetts, has done a great job of putting this in place so they really catch thieves, but it's less developed on hill. Do you see this as an area that you can work with ski areas on and ski patrols to help police collisions better and hopefully reduce them?
So a couple of things. We are also partnering with the Snow Angel Foundation. Chauncey and Kelly are phenomenal. Their story is deeply moving. They created their new foundation just a couple years ago, and I said, we're all in. We're going to create a new education program for all of our patrollers who go through what we call the annual refresher, so that at the end of the annual refresher, they can go through an education program sponsored by them and by us about the She Was 5, You Were Doing 50 program, just to create much more awareness. We're going to do a joint fundraiser and public service campaign with them. In terms of what the ski areas are doing, we will support whatever they need us to support. They will drive that innovation, that technology. If they need patrol to utilize that technology while they're operating on their management, on their ski areas, they will certainly do that. We just want to support what they see as important. And yes, skiing at a high rate of speed, we see it, right? We see social media challenges. That creates risk for the skiing public, and it creates more work for the ski patrollers, but they're there and they're trained up and they're ready to respond if they're needed.
All right, Stephanie, I know you got to run. That was a lot of fun. So nice to meet you. And I love what you're doing with the National Ski Patrol. Can't wait to see how it evolves. Let's do this again sometime. Thank you so much.
Right. I'll keep you posted.
Thanks so much, Stephanie.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
That's Stephanie Cox, CEO of National Ski Patrol. Thanks so much for that, Stephanie. You crushed it. And thank you all so very much for listening. We have got pods stacked through the end of 2025. You will hear conversations with the leaders of Sugarloaf, Maine, Blue Mountain, Ontario, Killington, Vermont, Taos, New Mexico, Waterville Valley, New Hampshire, Stowe, Vermont, Loveland, Colorado, and many, many more through the end of 2025. You will want to subscribe to the Storm Skiing newsletter at stormskiing.com to get those the moment they drop. You can also follow the Storm on X, Instagram, and YouTube at Storm Ski Journal. Until next time, stay well, stay safe. I'm Stuart Winchester, and I'll talk to you again very soon.
The Storm Skiing Podcast is a Quicksilver Films production.